In today's video, we're going to be making ourselves a little game in Scratch called Alien Wars. Now, when you load up Alien Wars, you are greeted by this little splash screen that tells you the rules of the game, what you have to do to win. So basically, you're a little grey UFO that moves around the page using your mouse cursor. Your job is to collect all the friendly blue UFOs. Each time you collect a blue UFO, you earn yourself 1 point. Also on the screen, you're going to see some pinky purpley UFOs, which are the enemy, and you need to avoid touching those, as if you do touch them, you will lose 3 points off your score. As soon as you get over 20 points, you will win the game. If you score less than minus 20 points, you will lose the game. Okay, so I'm just going to run the game now and show you what it's all about. If you press the start button, the game will begin. Okay, so I'll press the green flag, you'll hear some music start up, and then you can press space to start. Okay, so you got these two aliens flying around. I'm just going to stop it for a sec so I can explain what's going on. You've got these two spaceships flying around, and they're producing clones of themselves. Okay, as they produce clones, those clones are going to move towards your mouse cursor or the main spaceship that's moving around the page. As I said before, you need to collect the blue guys and avoid touching these pink guys. As you can see, my score is on -3 because I've already hit one of the bad guys. Okay, I've got to try and make my score get back up into the positives. You'll also notice that the timer is here as well. Your job is to get to 20 points or more in the quickest time possible. Okay, and try and beat your mates. So I'll just run the game again. We'll start from scratch. I'll see if I can get to 20 points as quick as possible. It does take a little while, especially if you hit a pink or purple one, because you do lose 3 points. Going alright so far. Let's see if I can keep it up. Almost there. There we go. So when I got just over 20 points, I become the winner, and I did it in about 26 seconds. Okay, so you can try and beat that score later on. If I just run the game quickly again, and I'll hit all the purple ones, so I'll lose a heap of points. See my score going down quite quickly. It'll stop when I get below -20, and it says that I am the loser. Okay, and that's game over. Alright, so I'm just going to stop that. You know how the game works now. I'll just minimize that and start a new document up. Alright, so when you start a new document, you're going to be greeted with the usual scratch cat on the middle of your stage. Just make sure you go down to the Sprites library at the bottom, right click on him and delete him. Once he's deleted, let's bring in a backdrop for our game. So you should have the stage selected down the bottom here. Choose the first option there, choose backdrop from library, and I'm going to choose a space theme, and I'm going to choose this space backdrop here. Okay, you can delete backdrop 1 now, which is just an empty white backdrop, and stick with the space backdrop. And you can see that that appears in your game space or your stage. So that's looking good. Next thing we're going to bring in is the sprites that we need to get this game going. Okay, so down the bottom here where you've got new sprites, hit the little troll. Actually, we're not going to hit the troll today because we're going to upload our own. I've actually saved a few UFO pictures from Google Images. Okay, all I needed to search was UFO cartoon, and I look for ones with transparent backgrounds. Alright, so the first one I'm going to bring in is the main UFO. Okay, that's our main character. I'm going to use the shrink tool up the top of the page here, so there's 4 arrows pointing towards the center. And I'm just going to click on that little guy until he gets down to a reasonable size. I'm going to do the same again now. I'm going to go and upload another sprite from file by hitting that little folder. And I'm going to bring in the good UFO, who again turns out nice and big. So you're going to need to use the shrink tool again. Click on him plenty of times until you get him to a similar size as your main character. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And finally, we'll bring in one more UFO. This one is the bad guy. Okay, so we've got to try and avoid touching him. We're going to use the shrink tool again to get him down to size, so he's a similar size as our other guys. That's probably a little bit small. We'll just go back up one size. How's that looking? Oh, actually a bit too big. Enemy can be a little bit smaller than the other guys. Alright, so there are our 3 UFOs. What we need to do is basically code them up and get them working. So what I might do is I'll start with the good guy to begin with and just get him moving around the page. So on the good guy, which is the main UFO, what we want to do is go to our Events tab like usual and bring out the when the green flag is clicked. So when we start our game, what do we want to do? Okay, now to start our game, we're going to need to press the space bar. Okay, if you remember in the example, we had a help menu up. We're going to worry about the help menu a bit later on, but we do want to start our game by pressing the space bar. So what we need to do is just wait once we run our game until that space bar is pressed. And we can do that by going to the Control tab here and about halfway down you'll see the Wait Until block of code. So wait until something happens. And in the Sensing tab here, we're going to go down and choose the key space pressed. So we're waiting until we press the space bar. Once we press the space bar, we want to tell this little guy to move. Okay, so in the Motion tab here, we're going to say go to mouse pointer. Okay, we always want this little guy to go to the mouse pointer. Now if I run that code now, he's going to go to the mouse pointer, but he's going to stop. Okay, we need to put this blue bit of code in a forever loop, so he's forever following our mouse cursor. So in the Control tab, just grab your forever loop and wrap it around, go to mouse pointer, and then reattach it to the rest of your code. Now when we run the game, nothing's going to happen until I press the space bar, and then we should see this little guy follow my mouse cursor wherever it goes. Alrighty, so that's working nicely. We're not going to worry about anything else on the good UFO or the main UFO just yet. I do want to get these other two UFOs moving before we come back and start adding in scores and things like that and collision events. So let's go across to our good UFO now. What we're going to do here is code him up. And it's going to be a similar start. In the Events tab here, we're going to bring out when the green flag is clicked. And in the Control tab, we're going to wait until, from Sensing, choose the spacebar being pressed. So we wait until the spacebar is pressed before he starts moving. Alright, so there's a few things we want to do here. First thing, in motion, we're going to get this guy to move at a speed of 10. So we move him at 10 steps at a time. If he hits the edge of the page, we want him to bounce off it. Okay, so scrolling down in the Motion tab, you'll see if on edge, bounce. Alright, if we attach that to there, I'm not sure if that's going to work straight away. Let's have a look. Yeah, he just moved for a second and then stopped. It's because we haven't got a loop around this code to tell it to keep looping over and over again. Okay, now in this case, we need to stick in a forever loop if we want that to happen. So let's put the forever loop in and see if he starts moving. Okay, so there he goes. He's just going backwards and forwards by the looks of things at the moment. But when he hits the edge of the page, he bounces off it, which is good. I know he's going upside down, but that's nothing to worry about at the minute. Okay, now I don't just want this guy going left and right for the entire game. We want him moving to random positions throughout the page. Okay, so what we're going to need to do is add in some extra code to tell him to do that. So back in the Motion tab, we've got this option, where is it? Point in direction. Okay, we're going to get this guy to point in a different direction at random times throughout the game. So what we're going to do is move that just inside the top of the forever loop. So when the forever loop starts, he points in a certain direction. At the moment, he's pointing to the right. That's at 90 degrees. If you want him pointing to the left, we could have minus 90. If you want him pointing up, 0, or pointing down, 180 degrees. Okay, I don't want to have him stuck just pointing in one direction though. I want him to point in different directions, and I want the computer or the game to choose random directions for him to look in. So I'm going to go across to my Operators tab here, and we've got this Pick Random 1 to 10 option, which we can put over the top of the 90 and replace that 90 with. Now the direction we want him to point in, we're going to give him an option from minus 180 to 180. So that's basically a full circle. He can go in any of those directions. If we run the game, you might see him change his direction a bit now. Okay, I know he's going absolutely mental at the minute, but you can see he's pointing in all sorts of different directions, and he's still moving, although it is looking a little bit funny. So we do need to add a little bit more code in to get him working properly. Okay, and basically it's this section here that we need to work on. What we're going to do now is create a new type of loop that we haven't used before. It's called a repeat loop, or if you're actually coding from scratch, it's called a for loop. So we repeat this piece of code for a certain period of time. Okay, so I'm going to stick that inside our for loop or our repeat loop. And we're going to repeat this about 25 times. Okay, then I'm going to put it back up here. Once that's repeated 25 times, then we're going to go back to the start of our forever loop and pick a new random direction to point in. Once he's pointing in that direction, then we're going to go down and moving at speed 10, 25 times before coming back around and picking another random direction to point in. Now this 25 times, how long is it? It's a couple of seconds at the most. Okay, so when you run the game now, you'll see he's always changing his direction every couple of seconds. Okay, and if he hits the edge of the page, he bounces off it. Okay, so this repeat loop or for loop will last a couple of seconds before he changes direction again. Okay, so that's got our little blue guy moving nicely. What we might do next is get the pink guy doing the same thing. So all you need to do is pick up this code, whoops, and just drop it on the bad UFO. Okay, when you look at the bad UFO now, the same code is inside it. And if you run your game, you can see now we've got the pink and the blue guys moving nicely throughout our game. Okay, it's looking pretty good. So the next thing that we need to do is start creating clones of the good and the bad UFOs. If you remember in the example, there was little clones that would follow the mouse cursor, and your job was to collect those clones to get yourself points. Alright, so what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to the good UFO and do this. Inside of this code here, in the control tab, right at the bottom, the second last option here is create clone of myself. I'm actually going to pick that up and put it at the bottom of that forever loop. Okay, and now when I run the game, you're going to see clones appearing. Every 25 steps, we're going to see clones appearing of that blue one. Okay, they don't move yet, they don't look exactly right, but that's going to come. We're going to do the same for the pink thing as well now. We're just going to create a clone of myself on the bad UFO and put it at the bottom of its block of code as well. So we're going to see pink ones going as well. So every time a blue one's created, a pink one is created as well. Okay, there's a few more things we need to do now to get this looking good. I'm going to go back to the good UFO sprite and we're going to start coding him up some more. Okay, what we're going to do now is just code up the clones. Okay, this is the code for the main blue guy, or the main good UFO that moves around. What I'm going to do now is bring out this piece of script that says when I start as a clone. So now we're just coding up the cloned versions of the UFO. Okay, first thing I want to do is make these clones a little bit transparent, so a little bit see-through. And the way we do that is just go to looks, and just past halfway you'll see this option that says set color effect to 0. You can change that color effect and choose ghost and drag that out onto your page and attach it to the code. What we want to do is set our transparency to about 50%. So set ghost effect to 50, and that's going to make it half as visible as it usually is. Okay, so if we run the game, you'll see the clones that appear now in the blue UFO are slightly see-through. Okay, they're somewhat transparent. Alright, so that's the first step. Next thing we're going to do is get these clones moving towards our mouse cursor. Okay, and the way we do that is we go to our motion tab here, and we've got the option to point our clones towards our mouse cursor. So here it is here, the blue one, point towards mouse pointer. Okay. You can either leave it as mouse pointer or choose the main UFO. I'm just going to go main UFO, so they're always pointing towards this little grey guy. Okay, once it's pointing towards him, I want to level him out. I don't want these clones to be lopsided, so they're like these two are at the moment. We want them sitting level, so it looks like they're actually flying the right way. And the way we do that is we just stay in our motion tab, and down near the bottom you've got set rotation style left to right. Okay, just leave it on left to right. The other thing we want it to do is move at a speed of 1. So still in the motion tab, right back at the top, move it 1 step, not 10. And that's just going to slowly move those clones towards the main UFO, which is us, or our little grey guy. Alright, now that's only going to occur once and stop unless we put a loop around it. Okay, so in our control tab here, now we're not going to do a forever loop again, we're going to use the for loop or the repeat loop again and wrap it around it. We're going to repeat it 300. Okay, so that's probably about 10 seconds, I'm guessing. Okay, and it's going to do that. So let's attach that to when I start as a clone. So they're going to appear transparently, and then they're going to start moving towards my mouse cursor. So it's just the blue ones at this stage. So each time a blue one appears, you'll see it will start following my mouse cursor. Pink ones don't yet. We're going to do them shortly. Now if we keep that going, we're going to get too many clones on the screen. Alright, so we need to be able to delete those clones after a certain amount of time. Okay, we also want to be able to collect those clones, and they'll delete once we run into them, or collect them. So what we're going to do now, staying in the control tab, we're going to create an if-then statement. So let's bring the if-then statement out onto your page. So what we're going to do is work out how to collect these blue clones. Alright, so still on the blue good UFO, if, we're going to go to sensing and choose touching mouse pointer. We'll change mouse pointer to main UFO. So if our good UFO is touching the main UFO, then in the control tab here, we should have an option to delete this clone. Okay, and we want this code occurring all the time. Okay, so we're going to put him inside this loop. Okay, so if the main UFO is touching the good UFO, we should be able to delete the clone. Let's just give it a test run and see if that actually happens. Yep. So each time I hit one of those clones, they disappear. Now, it'd be good to play a little sound to show that we've actually hit that clone. So what I might do in the sound option here, I know that the pop sound is already in my sounds library. It's a nice simple little sound, so we might play that pop sound each time we collect one of the good clones. So play sound pop will just come in before delete this clone. So if good and the main UFO are touching, and we play the pop sound, and then we delete the clone. Let's have a look. Yep, don't know if you can hear that, but I can certainly hear it through my speakers. We're hearing a pop sound now each time we collide with one of the good UFOs. And something else we should do is probably get a score. Okay, so we're going to need to go to the data tab here and make a variable up so we can store our score in that variable. So give it the variable name score, leave it for all sprites and click OK. You'll see that your score appears in the top left hand corner. Each time we touch the good UFOs there, we probably want to change our score by 1. Okay, just to give ourselves 1 point. Alright, so let's see if we get some points now when we run our game. Yep, so each time we hit the good clone, we're getting 1 point. Now the last thing I want to do, if I was to let this game run and not collect any of those blue clones, we'd end up with a whole heap of clones on our page, like heaps of them. It would start to look a bit crowded, so we want to delete those clones after a certain amount of time. Okay, so after this 300 steps have gone through, what we might do is just delete the clone. If we can't collect it in that time, stuff it, we'll just delete it. So in your control tab, just drag delete clone right to the bottom there. Okay, so after about, say 10 seconds at the very most, that clone will disappear off the page. Alright, so that piece of code there, we can probably copy that onto our bad UFO and do a very similar thing with it. So what I'm going to do is just pick that piece of code up now, drag it and drop it onto the bad UFO sprite. And when you come across to the bad UFO sprite, you'll see that that code was sitting on top of the other one, but it's in there now. Okay, so let's read through it and make sure the bad UFO code matches up with what it should be doing. So when the pink or purple clones start on the page, we're going to set their ghost effect to 50%, so they're going to be somewhat transparent. That's fine. They're going to repeat this next section of code, point towards the main UFO, so it's going to follow the mouse cursor. That's fine. Its rotation style is left to right, which means it's not going to roll around and hang upside down and things like that, so that's good. And it's always going to be moving at speed 1, so that's fine as well. If we touch the main UFO, so if the bad UFO and the main UFO are touching, then change the score by 1. We need to change that. We want to get -3 points if we touch the pinky purple UFO. Okay, that just means that we're losing points for hitting the bad guy. Okay, and instead of playing this, oh, stop that for a sec. If we play the sound pop, it's going to sound the same as when we hit the good UFO. So let's play a different sound as well. So in our sounds here, what we might do is just choose sound from library, and a sound I found earlier was the cymbal. What symbols have we got? This plain symbol here. It's just a quick sound. So if we click OK on that, you can see it's in our sound library now. And instead of playing sound pop when we hit the bad UFO, we play the sound cymbal. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. So once they collide, we can delete that purple clone, and then after about 10 seconds we delete the purple clone. That looks pretty good. Let's just give that a test run as well. So let's see if we hit these bad guys. Alright, not too bad. It seems to be working, but we have an issue with the score. Okay, we haven't set it to 0 when we start our game. Okay, so we might fix that up now. So what we're going to have to do is just go back to the main UFO. Okay, and in the data tab, when we start our game, so when we click there, we want to set the score to 0. Okay, so as soon as we press the space bar to start our game, that score will be set to 0. So if we just test that again, you can see our score reset to 0. And you can just go through and collect them. Get 1 point for collecting the blue guys, minus 3 points for collecting the purple guys. So it seems like the score is working. Okay, but what we want to do now is end the game when we get to a certain score. So remember, if we get less than minus 20, then it's game over and we've lost. If we get more than 20, then we have won the game. Alright, so we're just going to stay on this main UFO now and start to put in some code there. What we're going to do is, inside this forever loop, we need to put in some code, and they're going to be if-then statements. So drag out an if-then statement from your control tab. Okay, we need to say if the score is greater than 20, then we've won the game. Okay, and the way we do that is we use our operators and we look for the greater than symbol and drag that between the if and the then. And then from our data tab, we just drag out score, put it in the first little box. So if the score is greater than, let's make it greater than 19. So anything bigger than 19 is obviously 20. So as soon as we hit 20, then we win the game. Okay, so the way we win the game is in looks, we just say winner. Okay, so as soon as we hit that 20 mark, a little speech bubble is going to appear and just say winner. Alright, and that's going to go inside this forever loop below go to mouse pointer. Now a similar piece of code is going to be used to lose the game. Alright, so we need to go back to control and drag out an if then statement. This time, oops, we need to go to our operators first. It's going to be the less than symbol. Okay, and it's going to be if our score is less than minus 19. So basically when you get to minus 20, then we're going to say loser. You can say whatever you want. Loser's a bit harsh, but we'll write it in there anyway. And that's going to come inside of that as well. So let's run it and have a look. I'll try and collect all these blue guys. Actually, it's going to take too long. I'll just collect the pink guys. Pink guys are quicker. Okay, so it's saying I'm a loser because I've gone below minus 20. The game still keeps playing though. Okay, so I want that game to stop once I get below minus 20 or I get to 20 and win the game. So what I'm going to do is go to my events tab here and I'm going to broadcast a message when we get to these 2 points, and it's going to be a new message that's called end. We'll click OK, and I'm going to put that broadcast message under say winner, and I'm going to duplicate it and put it under say loser. Okay, so whether we win or whether we lose, we're broadcasting a message to our game or to the code telling it that we have finished our game. Alright, so what we're going to do then is drag out this piece of code when I receive message 1 and just change message 1 to end. So when the code receives the broadcast saying we've ended our game, what we're going to do is go to Control and choose that Stop All function, and we're just going to say Stop Other Scripts in this sprite. So it's going to basically stop all of that script. Okay, so that basically stops our little main character moving and stops the scores from going up and down. Alright, this piece of code needs to be copied onto the other two UFOs as well, so that their scripts stop. Okay, so what we're going to do is just drag it onto good UFO and then drag it onto bad UFO. And what you're going to do is just go to the good UFO now, and you'll see that that little piece of code is copied across. Okay, same with the bad UFO. If you click on that sprite, you'll see that that little piece of code has copied across as well. So when the bad UFO receives the message that the game has ended, it's going to stop these two scripts. So the other scripts in this sprite. Same with the good UFO. When it receives the message we've ended our game, it stops these scripts from running. So now when we hit plus 20 or minus 20, I'll hit minus 20 again. You can see that the game completely stops. Okay, it says loser and we can't play anymore. Alright, so I'll just stop that. So that's looking pretty good. What else have we got left to do? I might put in some music in the background. I reckon some background music might go well. So in the main UFO, we'll go to the events here when the green flag is clicked. So when the green flag is clicked, we want some music to play forever. So I'm going to bring out a forever loop. Okay, so if the song does finish, it'll just loop back to the start and play it again. And the sound that I want, let's just load one in from our sounds library. Okay, let's not get one off the internet or anything. We'll just choose one that already exists. I want music loops. You can go through and choose whatever music loop you want. The one I found earlier was called Drive Around. Sounds pretty cool. So back in my scripts now, I can drag out the second option, remember, play sound drive around until done. Okay, make sure you get the one with until done on the end of it. And that's just going to keep looping that sound file over and over again until our game's finished. Alright, so if we press play, we should hear some music, which is good. So working well. What else do we need to do? We probably need to put in a timer, because remember we do want to get the best time, so the quickest time in our game. So what we're going to do is need to create a new variable. So I'll make a new variable up, and it's going to be called time. Leave the first option selected and press OK. You'll see that the time variable appears. Alright, what we're going to do here is when we start our game, we're going to reset that timer so it's always at 0. So in sensing here, down near the bottom, you'll see this reset timer option. Just put that underneath set score to 0. Okay, so each time we press the spacebar to start our game, not only do we set our score to 0, we reset that timer. So basically this time over here goes back to 0. And the way we're going to add time to that is we're going to go back to our data tab here. We've got the option to set time to 0, which we're going to drag out and just put inside our forever loop. We're not going to set it to 0 though. We're just going to go back to sensing and set it to timer. Alright, now when you run your game, press spacebar, you'll see that little timer in the top left there is going up. Okay, it's quite accurate as well. Okay, showing us quite a few milliseconds there. So let's get our timer into the game. I think the last thing we probably need to put in this game is the help menu at the start that tells people the rules of the game. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is we're going to need to create a new sprite for that. And the way we do that is come down to our new sprite library here and hit the paintbrush to paint a new sprite. First thing you want to do is grab your fill bucket, choose a background color, whatever it is, doesn't matter. I'm going to just choose a light grey. Don't worry about where it's positioned on your page at the moment. We're going to get it in the center shortly using a bit of code. Okay, so once you put your script up there, what we're going to do next is write in the name of our game using our text tool. So with the text tool selected, come down and choose a font you want. I'm choosing Gloria for my font, and I'm going to choose green for my color. I'm simply going to click on the page, and in capital letters I'm going to write Alien Wars. As soon as I click out of that, it gives me the option to resize it a little bit. So I might resize it and just move it to wherever you want it. I'm going to stick it on the left there. Once I've done that, I'm going to grab my text box again, change my color to black, and I'm going to change the font to Helvetica. I know it's a fairly simple font to read. I'm going to click on my page, and I'm just going to start describing the game. So you are the grey UFO. Move around using the mouse. Be quick. So nice simple instructions. Below that, I'm going to talk about the objectives of the game. So I'm going to try to touch the friendly blue UFOs. Each one gives you 1 point. Avoid the purple enemy UFOs. If you touch them, you lose 3 points. And the last thing I'll talk about is the score. So score more than 20 points to win. Actually, it's score 20 points to win actually. So score 20 points to win. Score minus 20 points and you lose. Alright, so click once outside that text box. Now you're going to have to resize it a little bit because we still got a little bit more text to go at the bottom. Just position that wherever you want. And finally I'm going to grab it, whoops, I don't want it black. Oh, well, I did want it black, but we'll leave it as red. I accidentally bumped the red there. What we're going to do is grab the text tool again. I'll just leave it as black, and I'll change my font back to Gloria. I'm going to click on the page and say press space to start. Once you click outside of that, you can position it wherever you want, and we are good to go now. Alright, so we're just going to go back to our scripts now, and we're going to code this sprite up. So first of all, instead of calling it sprite 1, let's go to the information tab and give it a meaningful name like splash. It is our splash screen. Okay, what we're going to do is in the events, when the start button is clicked, we want this to go to the center of our page. So in motion, you've got the option go to X and Y. And if you remember, on our little coordinates here, the center of the page here is X0 and Y0. So simply set your coordinates to X and Y as 0. And now when you run the start button, you'll see that that appears in the center of the page. So it's easy to see all of the writing. Next thing you want to do, you just want to make sure that it is in front of everything else. So down the bottom of your looks tab, you've got go to front. And you also want to show it, because we are going to hide this later when we start the game. So we want to make sure that it is actually showing to begin with. Then we're going to go to our control tab. We're going to wait until we press the space key. So when we press the space bar, that's when we want this to disappear. So in our looks tab, we simply choose hide. Okay, that will hide that, and our game will begin. So just quickly going through that again. When we start the game, put the help menu in the center of the page, make sure it's in front of every other sprite, make sure it's showing, and we just wait until the spacebar is pressed. Once the spacebar is pressed, we hide it, and we're good to go. So let's run that. You can hear the music playing, press space, and our game has started. Okay, so now we just go through and start collecting the UFOs. Okay, I might just lose. It's going to take too long to play this. Okay, so there's my time, there's my score. We don't care about my time really because I lost. You're only really worrying about your time when you win. So my best is about 26 seconds. So let's see if you can beat that. So I'll stop that now. I'm pretty sure that's our game done and dusted. So what we're going to do now is just go to File, Save As. You'll probably want to make yourself a new folder called Alien Wars. Inside of that folder, give it the file name Alien Wars and save it. Okay, you can see the file name appears up there. Make sure you play it at full screen. I think it looks better when you're at full screen. But what we've got there is a working Alien Wars game. So good luck making that.